This is KGW News at Sunrise.
Good morning, and thanks for getting up with us on this Saturday morning. I'm Tim Gordon. This morning on Sunrise, a part of southwest Washington is underwater while landslides continue to cut off neighborhoods. Plus, COVID cases are increasing in Oregon. How health leaders plan to help hospitals if too many patients come in. But before we get to all that, let's check in with Chris McGinnis for a quick look at that forecast. Chris.
Well, Tim, are we done with the rain? I think a collective yes is the answer, if I could hear all of you yelling at your television sets right now. And you know what? For the most part, we are. How about that? 42 last check at PDX under a cloudy sky. We still have a couple of spits of rain here and there. In fact, radar is showing that. It's just a couple of green blobs out there this morning. Very, very light, if anyone is seeing anything at all. But the bigger picture here across the northwest shows the storm track now beginning to lift away from the area. And that means that we get a chance to dry out for the weekend. And I am very, very happy to say that. Right now, we're 42 at PDX. Beaverton waking up to 38, 36 Hillsboro. Big picture across the state of Oregon. The really cold stuff, and it's not terribly cold, but we're talking about temperatures in the teens right now towards Baker City. Bend and John Day waking up to 30, Pendleton at 35. All right, the plan for today, lots of clouds this morning. I think we're going to see some sun breaks this afternoon with temperatures climbing into the upper 40s. Your Sunday forecast and the week ahead. It's just a few minutes, Tim.
Okay, Chris, great to hear about some dry weather. We need it. That's because we've been seeing major flooding and landslides across southwest Washington. And this morning, many people's homes and cars are underwater. Catherine Cook has a look at some of the damage from Lewis and Cowlitz counties.
Bailing out in Chehalis. Late Friday afternoon, Sky 8 captured images you could only see from the air or by boat if you had one. Those who did were in high demand amid miles of muddy, waist-deep water. Flooding in Lewis County forced a 20-mile stretch of I-5 to close for hours. Around the interstate, stranded drivers ditched their cars, headlights still on. Horses huddled, cows waited, and a few people drove right on through, ignoring advice from multiple agencies. 40 miles south of Chehalis in Longview.
And we had the surprise of our lives here yesterday about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Another impact of heavy rain. This landslide right next to Doug Parker's house on Maplewood Drive.
And it sounded as though during a windstorm that we had several trees fall. And it was actually that slide next door that was going down the hill.
It took out a telephone pole, cutting off utilities for quite a while. Good chance someone missed their mail, too. Doug's just glad the slide missed his house. His neighbors are also safe.
We were extremely fortunate.
On Friday, Washington Governor Jay Inslee issued an emergency weather proclamation because of hazardous driving conditions. So far, officials have conducted 21 water rescues in Lewis County. Those displaced by flooding can find shelter at Centralia Middle School, which also has room for pets. Catherine Cook, KGW News.
And thankfully, the water is receding on the Oregon coast. High water over Highway 101 closed the road to cars on Thursday. It's open now with some high water still nearby. And that wasn't the only spot seeing delays from flooding.
We drove up to Warrenton yesterday during all the heavy rains, and there's water all over the highway, and we had to keep going around the puddles that were forming all along the roadway and everything. So
now, Warrenton declared a state of emergency when its stormwater system became overwhelmed by the rain, leading to even more flooding. But conditions have improved this morning. And you can always find the latest weather and traffic updates on KGW.com and our mobile app. Well, the pandemic is not going anywhere. Oregon reported more than 10,000 new cases of COVID on Friday. But we want to keep this on perspective for you. And take a look at this graph now. The blue line shows daily COVID cases. You can see this big spike we've seen in the past week. But the orange line right here shows how many people are currently in the hospital with COVID. It's a much lower percentage of total cases than we were seeing during the Delta peak. But that does not mean hospitalizations are not a concern. They are going up and are expected to climb throughout the month. And that's why the Oregon Health Authority has issued some new guidelines for hospitals in case they need to start rationing care for the sickest patients. Now, the rules would only be used when there are no other options, and hospitals are not at that point. But if they do go into effect, the rules would require hospitals to use a triage team to decide which patients will get priority care. The overall question will be, who is most likely to survive? Everyone hopes it does not come to that.
We certainly are hoping that these types of decisions are not needed. We'll continue to work very closely with our hospitals around staffing and other resources and collaboration and communication, but we wanted to be sure to equip our hospitals and healthcare partners with such a tool should these decisions be needed.
Now, even though the Omicron variant is less lethal than Delta overall, experts say it will still affect so many people that it will find those with weak immune systems and could overwhelm the hospitals. Oregon Governor Kate Brown also deployed 500 National Guard members to help hospitals most in need of staff. Well, the surge in COVID cases has led Portland Public Schools to halt in-person instruction at both Cleveland and McDaniel high schools for at least a week. Now, school leaders across the state expect several more schools will go remote in the coming weeks. Alma McCarty takes a closer look at how districts are handling the ever-changing situation.
Portland public school leaders explained there are several data points they look at when determining whether a school needs to pivot to remote instruction. The number of positive cases among students and staff, the number in quarantine, the staffing vacancies, and whether there are enough substitutes to step in. Staffing is the key factor.
We consider the closure of our schools to in-person learning and activities to be a measure of last resort.
The district stressed all of this is constantly evolving, but this was the snapshot PPS shared Friday. 754 students isolated due to COVID, 526 more in quarantine due to off-site exposure, compared with only 5 students quarantining due to an exposure on campus. As far as staff, 169 are in isolation, 58 quarantining after outside exposure, and 2 after an on-site exposure. More than 400 subs were requested district-wide, but only 60% of those requests were filled.
I don't think anybody in the broader community is going to be surprised that unless the conditions improve and we can guarantee consistency of staffing, that there may be additional school communities where we need to transition temporarily to distance learning.
That's not only the case for PPS. State leaders say they're bracing for staffing challenges everywhere and the likelihood that more schools will go remote.
With short notice, families will need to figure out childcare and revisit online classes.
Oregon's Department of Education Director Colt Gill explained educators are doing all they can to stay in person. He's urging everyone, not just students or staff, to set aside COVID fatigue and re-emphasize COVID protocols.
Even with high community spread, consistently implementing these practices keeps COVID-19 from spreading in structured school environments. We've proven this, but we have to commit to it to ensure that this works with the incredibly contagious Omicron variant.
And other school systems like the Beaverton School District haven't made calls for closures yet, but many are increasing some safety measures like masking for band or choir and even outdoors at recess. They're also stopping other things like school assemblies and visitors in the building. Well, restaurants all over the region are being impacted by the surge in cases as well. Now, coming up next, we hear from business owners who say they're shutting down in order to keep their employees safe.